Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of Movies You Miss podcast. This episode is brought to you by illicit substances.
Yes, it is. Oh, good golly.
How you doing today, John?
I'm great. How are you, V?
I'm great, too. It is with anxious excitement that I am preparing to talk about these two movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes.
I feel so dirty.
Yeah, there's a lot of cleansing that needs to happen after you watch both of these films, for sure.
Oh, God. But also, that is the great thing about movies, because they are art. Some of them will make you feel good, some of them will make you feel bad, and the point of a movie isn't specifically just to hype you up and be like, oh yeah, that was great, I had a great time, now I can, leave the movie theater. Movies are sometimes supposed to make you feel like shit.
Yes, absolutely.
$1 Million Baby is a perfect example.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There are a lot of movies that are specifically created and intended to make you feel depressed. Brokeback Mountain is a perfect example. Atonement. There are so many movies that are just so sad. I mean, let's go. Old Yeller. God damn it. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's been true for the existence of movies. And I think that's really important. And I do appreciate filmmakers wanting to just tell a story that needs to be told.
I agree with that. I feel like both of these films start out differently. One of them may not be as intense as the other with the openings, but there is a good amount of that humanity that really is thrust upon you immediately with what's going on in both of these movies.
It gives you a taste of how other people live, and I think that's really important, to humanize other people in this world who you might not encounter.
Absolutely, and by the time both of these films end, you really wish to not encounter any of these people.
Yes. But at the same time, humanizing the addiction problem in this country, I think, is really important. Especially, honestly, with my film, there's a humanizing element that is so raw. You just feel for these people, and not demonizing people who have addiction issues, I think, is really, really important.
I agree, yes, 100%.
So should we just dive right in and get it over with?
Indeed. Let's get our veins ready and our noses ready.
Oh, yes, let's do that. And don't get me wrong, folks. I really enjoyed both of these movies. I am fans specifically of my pick. I hadn't seen John's before. They're just rough. And I'm speaking about the 2000 Darren Aronofsky directed Requiem for a Dream.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
This is the second Darren Aronofsky film that we have chosen, not on purpose. This is a compliment to John's pick, Spun, and he prompted me to put this movie on our list, and rightfully so, and I do thank him for that. But we have done a Darren Aronofsky film in episode 3 with John's pick of The Fountain. It's my first Darren Aronofsky film, and he just makes fucked up movies.
Yes, he does, indeed. And it's interesting that The Fountain was our third episode, because The Fountain is Darren Aronofsky's third directorial film.
Perfect. And it's also, I think, my favorite of his.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely mine.
Awesome. So this one, again, which was made in the year 2000, is the story of 4 people who are addicts and their descent into that addiction. It is Sarah Goldfarb, who is an older woman played by Ellen Burstyn, who's incredible in this movie. We will get into that. Her son, Harry, played by Jared Leto. His girlfriend, Marion, played by Jennifer Connelly. And his buddy, Ty, played by Marlon Wayans. This cast is fantastic. 3 out of 4 of them are Oscar winners. Just do such a wonderful job in this movie. Every single one of them, so impressive. The acting drives this movie.
Absolutely. It's really nuts, because I remember the first time I saw anything for Requiem for a Dream. I was at my grandparents' house, and this was like 2001, 2002, and I was just flipping through the channels. I was alone in the house, and it happened to be the scene where Tyrone is messing around with his new mirrors that he's got. And I just, the description came up, and it's like Requiem for a Dream. I'm like, oh, I've heard of this. And I've heard that it's a really insane movie. It was an NC-17 rating, and I was just like, oh, okay. I'm going to try and get through as much of this as possible before anybody comes home. And as he runs back to bed with his girlfriend, that's when everybody started coming home. So I really did not see anything of this movie. A few years later, I ended up renting it at Hollywood Video, but I rented the DVD, and it was the R unrated cut of Requiem for a Dream. And I went back to it later that night because my parents didn't know that I rented it.
Yes. This is a very intense movie. This is a very raw movie. This is a very graphic movie. There is a reason why the MPAA rated this as an NC-17.
Oh, yeah. Darren
Aronofsky appealed that decision, and they were like, fuck no, have you seen this movie? This is an NC-17 movie.
I know. I remember reading that. I was like, what are you going to cut out, Darren?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
Yeah. And so Arson Entertainment decided to release the film unrated because NC-17 really has this stigma attached to it in a lot of ways.
Right.
So instead, they released it unrated, and then the R-rated version was released on video, which is what you watched originally.
Yes, the first time. And then after that, I bought the director's cut because I was able to find the unrated director's cut on DVD. There's about 4-minute difference there, and I think you know what scene I'm talking about.
I do, and that is exactly the scene they cut in order to make it an R-rated version for the DVD release.
Yes, indeed.
So, 4 people. A couple of them related, a couple of them seeing each other again. It's the mother and son, the son's girlfriend and the son's best friend, and their descent. Harry, played by Jared Leto, and Jennifer Connelly and Marlon Wayans are all heroin addicts.
Very unfortunately.
Ellen Bernstein wants to lose weight because she has gotten a phone call and a letter saying that she's been selected to be on TV on some sort of game show. And the nice thing that Darren Aronofsky intentionally created this movie where it would be pretty much timeless. You do not know when this movie is happening. It could be in the 80s, it could be the 90s, it could be the early 2000s. And that's one of the reasons why every time Ellen Bernstein's character, Sarah, turns on the TV, it's just that self-help infomercial. He realized any soap opera or any TV show that he would show would date itself, and he didn't want to do that. So it's just this infomercial that she turns on every time. So this is a timeless movie. She really wants to get on TV, and so in order to do so, she wants to wear this red dress that she's always loved and she wore to her son's graduation, and she can't fit into it. She starts trying to diet, the classic half a grapefruit diet, and is hungry all the time. It's not working. And one of her neighbors says, oh, well, just go to your doctor and get some pills. My friend lost 40 pounds on that. So she goes to this doctor to get a prescription pill, and because she thinks that's the right thing to do and safe, and it's from a doctor, right? And basically what he does is give her uppers. He gives her I would say those 90s diet pills, right?
Right, yep.
And she gets addicted to them. And rightly so. Just because it's a prescription medication doesn't mean that you can't get addicted to it, doesn't mean it isn't bad for you. And I thought Darren Aronofsky choosing to have these parallel stories, one of heroin addicts and other of prescription drug addiction, was such a shrewd decision. Because you're not just, as a viewer, you're not just saying, oh, well, they're heroin addicts. Oh, well, they're dirty, they're on the street or whatever. There's a lot of judgment attached to that, right?
Right.
And instead, showing similar addiction pathways, if it's prescription drug, if it's food, if it's cigarettes, if it's alcohol, if it's heroin, it doesn't matter. Addiction is addiction. It doesn't care what you are addicted to. And it really, I think, peeled back the vilification of addicts by having this parallel story of Sarah's be prescription drugs.
I do agree with that wholeheartedly, actually. And that's one of the reasons why I actually really enjoy drug cinema, is because not only is it, a movie that's like, oh, it's so fucked up, you got to see it, which is a quote coming from Kevin Smith, because, there's definitely a lot of movies that are fucked up that you want to show your friends and be like, this movie's fucking twisted, let's check this out. But the humanity and the overall, like I've said in the past, anguish of certain characters in these movies, you really do have empathy for, because maybe you yourself are not necessarily a drug addict, but maybe you have a vice of your own that you are, not like as heavily into, but it's something that I think everybody has a vice in their life, regardless of what that is. Alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, movies, music, stuff like that. Whereas a lot of times people really are chastised, and I'm guilty of, driving through Skid Row in downtown and being like, they're all drug addicts. They all didn't start that way, but, they are now, and there definitely is that humanity and empathy and understanding that, you yourself could very likely be one of these people someday if you aren't careful.
Yeah, and I think that's very well said, and I appreciate the fact that you take that message away from drug movies or drug cinema as well.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting with me in the way I watch movies is I try to pick a character that I feel like I'm most like. And when I get that way and I really can kind of see myself as potentially being one of these characters also, or that person that they're portraying, that's when I really get into the movie. And when I first saw Requiem for a Dream, like I said, I was a lot younger than I am now. And watching it over the last few years, it definitely takes on a bit more of a different meaning for me because I have had, issues with certain substances, maybe not heroin at all, but I definitely like my marijuana and I do like to drink. And there are times where I'm like, okay, I need to take a break. And I've even asked my wife sometimes, I'm like, am I an alcoholic? Do I come off as one ever? And she's always reassured me. She's like, if you were an alcoholic, you wouldn't have a bar full of booze and you wouldn't have, drinks in the fridge. It would be all gone. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a good way to put it. But at the same time, I feel like I could be an alcoholic and still drink slowly. It's interesting, like watching Requiem for a Dream. Sarah Goldfarb's got the pills. Everybody, the other three are on heroin, and it's interesting, like trying to put yourself in that position, especially somebody like you and myself who has been in the hospital, who has been given morphine in the past.
Yeah,
and morphine is a form of heroin, and it's fucking glorious when you're in the hospital and you need it and you get it. And so watching Requiem for a Dream, every time they spike their vein and they inject themselves, I recall the last time that I had morphine. So to an extent and personal experience, I feel I had a slight problem with morphine in the hospital. And so watching this movie is one of those things where I'm like, man, I got out of the hospital and I didn't detox necessarily. But, I missed it. And every now and then I still am like, man, morphine was such a killer drug. What a beautiful painkiller.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly how it starts. I mean, look at the oxy epidemic and how, especially pharmaceutical companies who knew that it was highly addictive and knew that this was going to be a problem and fucking did it anyway. Yeah, and the slippery slope that oxy has led so many people down. I mean, that's why we have an opioid epidemic in our country right now. And all of these people were prescribed this to start. They didn't start off wanting to do heroin or wanting to be drug addicts. They end that way. But the start is a pretty innocent prescription because, they broke their leg or got in a car accident or what have you.
Right, yeah, very unfortunately. And in Requiem for a Dream's case, Sarah's the only one that's prescribed anything. There's a very small moment in the very early minutes of this movie where Harry and Ty are pawning off Sarah's television set to a guy on the boardwalk. And later on, she comes back. This guy's Mr. Rabinowitz, who we've seen in every Aronofsky movie. He's also in Breaking Bad. We've mentioned him before because he's also in The Fountain. And he says, Mrs. Goldfarb, mind if I ask you a question? You won't take it personal? And she's just kind of like, you can see she already knows what the question's going to be.
Yeah.
And then he goes, how many years we know each other? Why don't you tell the police already? Maybe they can talk to Harry and he'll stop stealing your TV. And she says, I can't do that. He's my only child. He's all I have. So in a way, she's also enabling, So there's so many little things in Requiem for a Dream in the first 20 minutes that you're just like, this is going to be a very slippery slope.
Yes. Oh, such a perfect descriptor. This movie actually was based on a book. Herbert Selby Jr. wrote it in 1978. And Darren Aronofsky... Wow, it's that old. Yeah, and Darren Aronofsky was already a fan of his writing. And so when this new book came out, and Darren Aronofsky was in film school, he snatched it right up and started reading it, and he read it repeatedly over a year's period. And after he made the movie Pi, he was basically given a blank check by the production company. It was like, you can make your next movie. And he knew immediately he wanted to adapt this book into a movie.
Awesome.
The cool thing is Herbert Selby Jr. wrote the screenplay with Darren Aronofsky, and so the original author had a direct connection and influence on this movie, which I think is so important in any situation that there's a book.
Oh, absolutely. I was very happy to see that as one of the first few times I saw it. I was like, who's Herbert Selby Jr.? And then, it says next credit based on the novel. I'm like, wonderful. And I've picked up the book a few times and I've read a couple of pages. I have not read it from beginning to end, but what I have read is pretty much on screen.
Nice, okay. And as we follow these characters through this movie, and as I've said, this is their descent into their really just drowning in their addictions, I guess is a good way to put it, or disappearing into their addictions. At the beginning of the movie, the first scene, Ellen Bernstein locks herself in the closet because her son is stealing her TV again to pawn it and get a fix. And it's this very sad scene, but it is a theme in this movie, which I thought Darren Aronofsky did a fantastic job, where with drug addiction, there's a high and there's a low, and that's true for your relationships as well. And
Right.
so with all the interactions with his mother, there is a good happy part where there's like reminiscing, and then there's the tension building of the reality of the situation, and they get in a bit of a fight, and then they come down and are sweet to each other again before he leaves. And that is a purposeful theme and trajectory of their relationship and their scenes together that Darren Aronofsky did, which I thought he was masterful at.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love the way that opening sequence is shot and put together. It's gorgeous. And I actually used the beginning of this movie in one of my editing courses in Manhattan. Our instructor was like, pick a movie that you think has some of the best editing that you've ever seen. And oddly enough, I chose this beginning and the beginning of Spun, and I used them both. I really liked the way that this one, how Requiem for a Dream began, because it looks like there's like 5 cameras going at once, but it's really, it's not, because of the budget. They did not have a lot of cameras. So there's a lot of choreography that goes on in the beginning of Requiem for a Dream that is just absolutely fantastic to watch.
Yes, and the editing had over 2,000 cuts in it, which was a record for a while until Spun came along, actually, and just blew that out of the water.
Indeed, yeah, and we'll get into that when we get into Spun. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Jay Rabinowitz, the editor of Requiem for a Dream and The Fountain.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was at an event in Manhattan. It was the same school I went to, Manhattan Edit Workshop. They're a very small art school in Manhattan. They teach editing and After Effects and color correction and all that good stuff. And there was an event where there was a discussion about editing, and it was Jay Rabinowitz, and I sat with him. I got there early because my instructor, Josh, he was like, you might want to come early because it's just going to be me and Jay for a minute. I'm like, oh, I'll get there early.
Hell yeah.
I got there about an hour early, and Jay and I discussed The Fountain and Requiem for a Dream like in detail, and it was just a wonderful conversation.
Awesome. Oh, that is great. And you know, as someone who's a fan of his, I'm sure he probably appreciated that conversation too, given he's more of a behind the scenes kind of guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was very receptive to my questions, and he answered every one of them, and told me that it was a very tedious process getting that film shot because of all the footage they had. But he said that he was very, very pleased with the finished product.
Oh, he should be absolutely proud of it. Yes.
Hell yeah. Oh, my God.
And one of the reasons why this film is so exceptional, I think, is because it actually starts on a high. You know,
yes.
Even though he's pawning off his mom's television set, everybody's in a pretty stable place. Mm-hmm. His mom's still healthy, he's still healthy, and everybody's okay. And this movie takes place over several seasons. It starts in the summer. And the summer is the warm, happy time where Harry and Ty, as friends, decide to buy a bit of heroin and then cut it and start selling it. And that's how they're going to make their money. And they'll be able to afford all these things, including Marion, his girlfriend. She wants to open up a clothing store because she designs clothes. They have all these big dreams, and hence the title, Requiem for a Dream. I love the fact that a requiem is a mass for the repose of souls of the dead. And I think that is just the perfect word chosen for this movie, the Requiem for Dreams. This is a mass for dead dreams, because this is not a happy movie. Dreams are not fulfilled in this movie. Mm-hmm. And we get to see them build out their dreams, and they actually do open up this little store for a hot minute. They are making money selling drugs, and Sarah is losing weight. And then the descent starts. And the fact that you, as a viewer, get to watch them almost make their dreams and almost fulfill them, and then come crashing down, it's even more heartbreaking, because you saw how close they were, and you saw how things could have worked out. They just fucking couldn't because of their drug addictions.
Right, yeah. And it's very frustrating to watch when things do start to go south, and then it's like, like you said, there's that high where they get the idea, like, you know what? No, fuck it. Let's go to Florida and pick up some of this shit, and we'll come back and we'll start offing it again. And then that's when it gets even worse. Yeah. And, you know, it's just like, there's really no good idea here. There's no saving grace for anybody.
And that's the thing about this movie, and pun absolutely intended. There is no fix.
Right.
There is no fix that's going to finally fulfill them, either through their veins or fixing their lives. And it's just so fucking heartbreaking to watch.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite scenes, and I'm not going to call the fever dream my favorite scene. I just love the way it's put together and the way that Ellen Bernstein really just like goes full force into it. But it's early on when Harry comes to visit his mother, and he's sober at this moment. She's definitely a little wired. She's, like, do you want some cake? I can go across the street. I can get you some coffee. What do you want? And she's like, geez, Mom, sit down for Christ's sake. You're making me dizzy. So when she sits down, they start talking, and he's like apologizing for not being there and, just kind of disappearing because she lives alone. He sits there in silence for a minute, and he starts hearing this sound, and then he looks at his mom and sees her clenching her jaw and grinding her teeth. And he goes, Ma, you on uppers? And she's like, what? He goes, you're on uppers. And she goes, what? No, I'm taking these pills to help me lose weight. He goes, that's what I thought. You're on diet pills, aren't you? And then he starts...
And she's like, no, the doctor gave them to me. It's okay.
He's a nice
it's from a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know more about, pills than a doctor? And he's like, believe me, Ma, I know. And that, it just always blows me away that he is like, he's trying to be the voice of reason.
The guidance, yeah.
Right, yeah.
The voice of reason, exactly,
There's no way to be the voice of reason when, that whole scene is nuts. And then she starts going into why she wants to lose weight and how, her passed away husband looked at her in that red dress and how, she dyed her hair for this TV show. And it's just, there's the dialogue between both of them was enough to win Ellen Bernstein the Oscar, but she unfortunately did not win it.
She didn't. She was nominated. And that scene has this monologue that, unless you're heartless, will make you fucking cry. It is so heartbreaking. She's this older woman. She's a widow. Her son's out of the house and he's a drug addict. And she talks about how she's lonely. This is the only thing she has going for her. Don't take this away from her. I've got no one. I'm so lonely. And it is so heartbreaking, and just, you want to hug her.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so hard to watch, just like the rest of this movie, that the cinematographer accidentally let the camera drift off target when she was making this speech. Yeah. And Darren Aronofsky yelled cut and was like, what the fuck, man? Because it was a single take for this speech, and they only did 3 takes of it. And they did it in different ways, and they just chose one of the takes, and that was it. There's no edits, because it was all Ellen Bernstein doing this. Yeah. And so Darren Aronofsky went to the cinematographer and was like, damn it, we missed it. And he realized that the cinematographer had been crying.
Yeah,
and
Matthew Libatique.
Yes, and it fogged up the camera's eyepiece, and that's how the camera drifted, and he was like, oh, okay. And that's the take that they used in the film.
I know, I'm so glad. I was so glad to read that when early on when I start reading trivia and the making of and whatnot. Mm-hmm. That and Her Fever Dream, those are the 2 that send the chills down my entire body, especially when she's talking to her dead husband in the closet right when the opening credits slams in at you. Just, I'm getting chills now. Like, it really just gets you everywhere.
It'll work out. You'll see. In the end, it's all nice.
Oh,
that's her quote at the very beginning of this movie.
So, and she's talking to her dead husband, and she's like, it's okay, Seymour. And you're like, oh, and the way that I don't know if you know this part, but the music that they're using in that speech is the Kronos Quartet getting ready to slam into the opening music. And I love how Aronofsky used it, and you can hear the baton tap on there, and that's when it comes in. It's just, I'm getting chills again. It's just so fucking brilliant.
Which was Darren Aronofsky tapping that. He was tapping the baton, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He conducted. Isn't that so bitchin'?
Oh, bitchin'. And so awesome. Good. And just, I love that Darren Aronofsky, in an artist's way, not a heavy-handed way, has his fingerprints on all aspects of this film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, I believe it's his best work of art, even though I do like The Fountain better. Mm-hmm. I believe this is his best piece he's ever produced.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, when we were talking The Fountain hits more for me because of personal experience.
Well, it's also more watchable.
And it's a little bit more watchable, yeah. But no, Requiem is definitely a fantastic film.
And as we said, Ellen Bernstein is Sarah in this movie, the mother, and we mentioned her with the Fountain episode because she's also in that, in a much more sane, much more sober role. But that made me realize, looking back on Requiem again, made me realize just how underutilized she is in the Fountain.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like, literally any older lady could have played this part.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I love that it was her.
Yeah, and then she's the older version of Murph, the daughter in Interstellar. She classically is in The Exorcist. And she's also just a giant badass.
She
has the triple crown of acting. She's won an Emmy, an Academy Award, a Tony. She's won Golden Globes. She has been nominated for a Grammy Award, probably so she could get the EGOT, is what I'm assuming.
What was she nominated for a Grammy for?
A Best Spoken Word album, so I think that was thrown in so she could get an EGOT. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
What did she win a Tony for?
She won for same time next year, in 1975, and the Academy Award was for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which is a Martin Scorsese directed film from 1974.
That's right. I have not seen that yet.
She's amazing and just hugely talented, which is why I think it's so funny that she's lending her skills to Law and Order SVU as a supporting character. Yeah, she is.
Oh, no kidding.
And I was just like, what just a force of acting coming into a TV show. She's so cool. She's been in tons of stuff and just, again, exceptionally talented. And she killed it in this movie. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think everybody really did. I think Marlon Wayans was excellent, coming from comedy. Like, a lot of times the comedic actors really can do drama very well, and I thought that Marlon Wayans really killed it, especially during the scene with Brody in the limousine. I always just get so tense the entire time, and then when he's running down that alley, and you told me what that camera is called before.
Snorri cam.
The Snorri cam. He's wearing that front and back, and they did that take a few times, and he's running so fast. And the crazy thing is, like, that is one of my favorite uses of that. I know it's used in Rock and Roll a lot, but it's my favorite use of it in Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
And that whole sequence just, oh my gosh, it's so intense.
And like Ellen Bernstein, Marlon Wayans was not interested in this movie until he watched Pi. Same as her.
Oh, no kidding.
Both of them were like, no, this script is really intense. They both watched Pi and were like, we're fucking in.
Nice. Well, Pi is a bitchin' flick.
And Marlon, you will recognize him from the early 90s comedies, the Wayans brothers, early 2000s Scary Movie.
Yep.
And he was also an FBI agent in the Sandra Bullock, Melissa McCarthy movie, The Heat.
Oh, I never saw The Heat.
Oh, yeah, he's Sandra Bullock's love interest.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But lest we forget, he's also in White Chicks.
I was intentionally...
come on.
Not going
White
to mention
Chicks,
that.
White Chicks is fucking funny.
No, it's not.
That movie still makes me laugh. I love that movie.
Oh my God, no. And he, again, like I said, he's the only one who hasn't won an Oscar. The other two, Jared Leto was so good in this movie as well. Everybody's good in this movie. I'm just going to keep saying it. He's known for Dallas Buyers Club, as Joker in Zack Snyder's DC movies, including Suicide Squad. He's also, a movie you brought up a couple episodes ago, he's the love interest in Alexander.
Yes, he is.
He's in
Hephaestion.
Yeah, Hephaestion, yeah.
Hephaestion.
He's in Fight Club, but we're not going to talk about it.
Why?
Because we don't talk about Fight Club.
Oh, look at you. That's right, he is. I wanted to destroy something beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
Fight Club is a great fucking movie.
It is a great movie. He's in American Psycho. He is Paul Allen.
That's right.
The scene that almost ruined Huey Lewis in the News for me.
Yeah, probably for everybody. That scene is so funny, but yet just, oh man, American Psycho is a gnarly one.
Yes.
I've never read the book, and I've heard the book is far worse.
I have heard that too, which is why I wasn't going to read it. And lastly, the woman who plays Jared Leto's girlfriend, Jennifer Connelly. For any listener who's been a regular one, they know how much I am a fan of hers. She's fantastic. She really just jumped onto the scene with the movie Labyrinth in '86 with David Bowie.
Hey, we mentioned him.
Yay, we mentioned him in this episode. She is in A Beautiful Mind, which she won the Oscar for. She was also in Blood Diamond with Leo.
Yes. Which I liked and you refused to see.
Correct. It's because of the accent. Day the Earth Stood Still remake with Keanu Reeves. She was in that. She was the main character in that.
That wasn't horrible.
No. And she's also in two movies we've mentioned repeatedly on this show. Alita, which was part of our second episode. Yes. And, of course, Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick.
She's awesome. She's great in this. It is heartbreaking to watch her descent as well.
Oh, man.
The other reason why this movie is so good, exceptional direction and cinematography. The script is great. The actors are top tier. The most top tier you can... I mean, they're Oscar winners. They are incredible actors.
Oh, yeah.
And the music, as we've mentioned, is fantastic as well. Clint Mansell, again, partners with Darren Aronofsky.
Yes.
And the main theme of this movie has been in a ton of trailer music that you would probably recognize.
Most definitely, yes.
I remember it mostly from the Lord of the Rings Two Towers trailer. It's also in the Da Vinci Code, I Am Legend, Man on Fire, which is funny enough.
Did they use it in the Man on Fire trailer?
Yeah.
No way.
Which is funny because that's a tie-in to last week's movie.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a great piece of music. Very, very beautiful. And my sister is actually a huge fan of it, even though she's never seen Requiem. She's like, oh my God, I love this soundtrack. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing.
It's actually used in the trailer for Danny Boyle's Sunshine as well.
It is, yes. That was also on the list. That's true.
That's one of my favorite science fiction films on the planet. And I remember seeing the trailer and being like, that's Requiem. No, but yeah, Sunshine's great. We're going to talk about that in the future.
Okay, sounds good. I've never seen it, so that sounds good.
Oh.
And as I mentioned, Sarah is really addicted to TV as well before she even gets addicted to the diet pills. And she's always turning it on to this self-help infomercial with Tappy Tibbins.
Juice by Tappy. Juice by Tappy.
Juice, juice, juice.
Join us in creating excellence. It's nuts.
It's insane. So Christopher McDonald is Tappy Tibbins, who I recognize immediately from Happy Gilmore. Shooter McGavin.
Shooter McGavin.
I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? No.
He improvised most of the material that is in the Tappy Tibbins infomercial. They shot it all in one day with a bunch of SAG extras in the audience. And the crew and the whole audience stood up and gave him a standing ovation at the end of the day because he had improvised most of it and he was just so incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I thought I remembered that correctly, that all of his stuff was shot in a day.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wonder...
The whole movie was shot in 40 days, by the way.
40 days? Wow. Damn.
So the other thing that makes me love this movie, and again, I've been saying this episode, these movies are hard to watch, but they are absolutely 100% worth watching. You just got to be in the right mindset.
Absolutely.
These are heartbreaking. These are gut-wrenching. These are excruciating. These are agonizing films to watch, but they are 100% worth your time.
I agree.
And Darren Aronofsky has said, ultimately, Requiem is about the lengths people go to escape their reality. And that when you escape reality, you create a hole in your present because you're not there. You're chasing off a pipe dream in the future, and then you'll use anything to fill that vacuum.
Man, yeah.
One of my favorite comments about this movie is, it's a great film. I hated every minute of it.
Yeah.
So yes, that is my movie. It is, again, similar to last week when we were talking about different movies and included The Hurricane with Denzel Washington, said it's an important story to tell.
Yeah. I
think this one is too. I think it humanizes drug addiction and it really shows the descent because most people just think, oh, a drug addict on the street. And you don't start from, this is a normal person who cooks dinner and pays their taxes. And that's where they started. And I think that's a really important reminder. I would 100% never, ever get my grandmother near this fucking movie ever.
No, neither would I.
I would not have it in the same household.
No.
I would recommend it to some of my friends. Anybody in their early to mid 20s can start watching this movie. There are some friends I'd certainly recommend it to. I would recommend it to probably one of my sisters.
Oh yeah,
the one who loves the soundtrack. So yeah, I understand why with a $4.5 million budget this movie only made $7.5 million worldwide. But it is an incredible film, and for anyone who enjoys more than just popcorn movies, and similar to The Revenant, that movie was kind of excruciating to watch too. It was a little bit tough to watch because it was just kind of rough in a more environmental way than than this one, because you just felt cold all the time watching Leo. But yeah, for people who enjoy more expansive experiences in film, I certainly recommend this movie.
I absolutely do as well. I have turned a lot of people onto it. I've sat people down and been like, let's just check this out. There were times in my early 20s when I would bring it over to a buddy of mine's frat house, and we would all get really stoned, and we'd sit there and watch it, and then we would just kind of sit there in silence at the end of it for a good 10 minutes. Yeah. And then we would kind of be like, all right, let's shake that off. Let's go have some fun now. And then we would talk about the movie throughout the night. Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere that's sunny.
Yeah, but we would always talk about the movie in depth and kind of like go into it. You know, we were all artists and wanted to discuss it, but it was definitely, even in your 20s and younger than that, it's one that you just like you can't look away from.
Yeah. Absolutely, and nor should you, because it's so well crafted. And
Very.
You can watch it on Amazon for $3.99.
There you go. Or you can watch your 4K copy like I have.
Well, I think that about does it for Requiem. Are you ready to get into your movie?
I am just as ready as anybody can be. How about you?
All right, let's do it.
So I chose the 2002 star-studded cast-led, Jonas Åkerlund directed Spun. This comes 2 years after the release of Requiem for a Dream. This film stars a lot of young actors, and I say star-studded because there were really only 2 or 3 that a lot of people would have recognized at the time. And some of these other ones, this wasn't their first film, but they were still up and coming, and they are now almost household names, I would say. A majority of them are. So this film stars Jason Schwartzman, Brittany Murphy, John Leguizamo, Mina Suvari, Patrick Fugit, Mickey Rourke, Peter Stormare, and we have a little bit of Eric Roberts thrown in as well. And I gotta be honest,
in this movie.
So good.
I love how campy he is in everything he does. He's so ridiculous.
Yeah. I have had the pleasure of working with him on one of the first TV series that I worked on. It was his one and only day that we had him, and I was wearing a metal shirt from this French metal band called Agalloch, and he was looking at me weird, and I was like, "Hey, Mr. Roberts," he's like called me over, and I'm like, "What's going on, man?" And he goes, "What the hell is on your shirt?" And I was like, "Oh, this is a French metal band. They're called Agalloch." He goes, "Agalloch?" I'm like, "Yeah, they're really awesome. You should check them out if you're interested." And he pulled his phone out and he typed them and he said, "I'm going to listen to them."
Really?
Who knows if he ever? Yeah, who knows if he ever did? Maybe. I hope so.
That's nice.
Yeah, but he was a very cool guy, very professional. And I actually was in the cast van on the way back to base camp with him at the end of the day. And when we were signing him out, he found me. He was like, "I'm going to listen to that band. If I see you again, I'll let you know what I think." And I'm like, "All right, sounds good, man." So that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and Patrick Fugit, who I mentioned during our Girl Next Door episode, he was in the first feature film that I ever worked on, which was shot at the same location as The Girl Next Door. Everybody else in this movie I have not worked with. I almost worked with Brittany Murphy, but she very unfortunately passed away before that could happen. And in my personal opinion, this is Brittany Murphy's shining achievement.
I agree.
Just absolutely wonderful in this movie. Funny, scary, and at the same time, you feel for the girl, you know? It's really interesting to have an actress like her up against Mickey Rourke. And the scene with both of them in the hotel when she starts kind of going off the rail on him, I really like that scene. This is a very independent film. This is a very small film, but my gosh, they're all very, very convincing, just like in Requiem for a Dream. Everybody in this movie is convincing and dirty and really just
this whole
just
movie is dirty.
vile.
I wrote that down. Oh my god,
Yeah.
I wrote that down. That this entire movie felt dirty to me.
Oh, yeah,
the whole
it's
time
vile.
my skin was crawling.
Yeah, exactly. And that really is how it starts for us. You know, we meet Ross. The first thing that we see on screen is based on the truth and lies. And it's based on the truth because one of the screenwriters, William De Los Santos, this is based off of a winter in 1995 where he drove a meth cook around Eugene, Oregon.
Whoa.
Yeah, so there's the truth. Now, the lies, we don't know. I imagine the lies are a lot of the hallucinations, maybe. I don't know. I've never done meth. I've never been on a meth binge.
Or embellishing some of the, encounters or the drama in it. Embellish that it's not in Southern California now instead of Oregon.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But, oh, man. So the first scene that opens up into that meth house of John Leguizamo's, Jesus Christ. And like I said, I've never seen this movie before. This was my first experience. It has a very, very different energy than Requiem. Requiem is about heroin. It is a downer.
Yeah.
This is a meth-fueled movie. In
very.
every sense of the word.
Yeah. Even the first few edits.
Fucking hell, yeah.
Ross, he gets out of the car and he's like, spank, spoof, crank. And it's like, call it what you will. It's all methamphetamine. That's what I'm here for. And then he knocks on the door. And I love the paranoia of Spider Mike, who is John Leguizamo's character, and he's like, "Who's there?" And he's like, "Oh, it's Ross." He goes, "Are you by yourself?" And like one of the edits is the viewfinder, and you see John Leguizamo's eye go left and go right, and then one of the other cuts is Ross's fingers like dilly dallying in the wind, and then he's like scraping his feet together, and he's like picking at his nails, and then he opens the door and gets him in, and he's like, "How much you want? How much you need?" And then that one edit where it's like, and then like John Leguizamo's face is just like just going all over the place, and he's like, "I lost my shit. Just let me find it for you. Why don't you go ahead and sit down?" And then Ross goes, "Oh, I can come back later." He goes, No, it's okay, man. It's good to see you. Come on." And he gives him a hug, and it's like, that's so true. You know, like when I would go buy weed sometimes in the valley, the guy would be like, "Oh man, you know what? Give me a few minutes. I'll be back." I'm like, "If you need me to come back, man, I can come back in like a half an hour." He's like, No. It's cool, man. It's cool. Just sit right here. It's all good. No, don't worry about it. It's good to see you. It's great to see you. Go ahead and hang out with and they're like whoever's sitting on the couch with them, because there's always going to be somebody.
Of course.
There. And then I love, he's like, "Go ahead and sit," and he's like snapping his fingers, like, Nikki, and Frisbee over there, and Frisbee, played by Patrick Fugit, he's like, what, hello? And he like gives him the horns up, he's like, "Hey, what's up?" Like a metalhead. The frenetic energy, the paranoia, and even like as John Leguizamo's character, Spider Mike, is like, "You know what, I think I dropped the stuff, I'm gonna go look for it." And then Frisbee's like, "You know what, no, you shouldn't go out there, I saw a lot of cop cars out there, like a lot of cop cars." And they start looking out of the window, and nobody's there. There's nothing there.
The streets are empty.
Neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the one thing I like about a lot of the shots in this movie, especially in Spider Mike's house, is that the windows are whited out. And I don't hate me for this. I have done cocaine in the past, and it very much resembled how I remember the corners of my eyes feeling, just very bright. And I just feel like the authenticity of Spider Mike's house is very, very much how it would look in any meth dealer's house.
Your cardiologist is so disappointed in you right now.
Yeah, I know. Got to experiment with some things. That was the hardest I've ever gone in the drug world, was tried cocaine.
That's pretty fucking hard.
I did it 3 different times. One time in Vegas, and then twice when I was living in Studio City.
Shit.
But I didn't do a lot. It wasn't like doing rails, I did like a bump off a key and
Your mother listens to this podcast.
Yeah, she might. I'll tell her not to listen to this episode.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Mom. It was over 10 years ago. All is well now.
We're going to do a pee test. I loved the emotions of that scene because drug addicts are extremely irrational.
Oh, yeah.
And they were, John Leguizamo, he'd be super happy, he'd be all amped up, and then he got super pissed and changed on a dime. And then he got in a fight with his girlfriend Cookie, and then he was happy again, and then she was really sad, and then she wanted to hug him, and all this stuff. The energy and the emotions are so frenetic, and it's so accurate with drug addicts, where their emotions just turn so quickly. And my oldest sister and her husband were both corrections officers.
Oh, no kidding.
At the county jail and lockup. And so they would have a lot of drug offenses coming through there, and have told us stories about people who are repeat offenders coming in, and the next time they just look worse, and the next time they just look and worse and worse and worse. And when they do intake, people are high as fuck on meth, and the things that they do in their holding cells when they're high is insanity. No right-minded person would ever do anything like this, but they are on meth. They would just do the craziest things I've ever heard. And then the next morning, they're like, "So do you remember what you did last night?" And they're like, "No, what'd I do? I finally slept." And it's like, fuck, dude.
Jeez.
It's a bummer. Yeah.
That's definitely... That's the one, again, the first 12 minutes of this movie really are just like a slap in the face for anybody that's never, experienced something like this. And the fact that it's based off of this winter in Eugene, Oregon with one of the writers and a meth cook is sobering to hear. It's one of those movies that I don't dare put on with my wife in the room. No. And even though she has seen Requiem for a Dream, that was her choice. She wanted to watch it with me when I sat down to watch it one time. But Spun is one I keep away from her. She's looked at the box and she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to watch this." I'm like, "No, you don't."
I get it. My personal feelings on these two movies is Requiem feels very crafted, whereas Spun feels like an exposition or almost exploitive, to be honest with you. I had more trouble with this movie than Requiem for a couple reasons, which we'll get into. But since we're still talking about the beginning, this is one of my all-time favorite credit intro scenes I've ever seen.
Isn't it awesome?
Why, for the love of God, why do movie makers not put John Leguizamo as Spider-Mike? Why don't they put the actors as their character names at the beginning of the film for reference? It was so much easier to keep track of everyone and their names because of that intro. And the way it was stylized was so good. But I loved the fact that they put the actor's name and then their character name, so you have a reference point right off the bat. I was so grateful for that. It was so fucking cool.
I'm glad that you enjoyed that, because it's always been one of my favorite opening credit sequences since seeing Spun. I love that every character's name has like a design sticker for them.
Yeah.
So like Spider Mike comes up and it says Spider Mike and he's in a spider web. And then Cookie is like spelled, really bold and beautiful.
Like Coca-Cola
there
logo.
We go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nikki is just like on lowercase, but she's got the lip kiss on there. And when we find out Mickey Rourke is the cook, he's it's a lit on fire.
It's so
good. And Frisbee is like black metal, because we find out later that he's a black metal fan. And the cool thing about finding that out is actually the music video that he's watching in his house while he's eating that TV dinner is a band called Satyricon. And the director, Jonas Akerlund, asked them to use one of their videos, and they said that he can use the music video for free as long as he directs their next music video.
Nice. That's a good trade.
Oh, I think so. And Jonas Akerlund is not a household name, but he has directed some of the most badass music videos that have graced music video screens. He's directed for Sugar Rose. He's directed for Madonna several times. He did the Frozen video where she explodes into all those black crows out in the desert. Yeah. He's done a Rammstein video. He's done some Rolling Stones. He's done one of my most favorite music videos. He did Lady Gaga's Paparazzi. He did...
Really? I fucking love that music video. That has Alexander Skarsgård in it, right?
Sure does.
Oh, God, that is such a good music video. Anybody who's listening, go on YouTube, watch Lady Gaga's Paparazzi right after this episode.
It's such a killer fucking video.
Yeah.
And he's directed a couple other films. Most recently, he directed a movie called Lords of Chaos, and that is based off of a book that came out about the black metal scene in Norway. But going back to the opening credits start 12 minutes into the movie. So we are
Which
in
was
Spider-Man.
Also cool.
Yeah, I like that. So we spend 12 minutes of complete paranoia, frenetic energy with Spider-Mike and Nikki and Ross and Cookie and Frisbee. And a lot of other people come up to the door that we get introduced to. So we get La Sad Girl and her friend from Circus Liquor. We get Fat Boy, who is actually Josh Peck from Drake and Josh.
I was wondering if that was him.
That was him, yeah.
Okay.
And another thing that's interesting about this opening sequence is, since Spider-Mike can't find his stash that he's selling, Nikki offers Ross a little help. He just needs to give her a ride. And so it's a strange moment in the movie, but Spider-Mike is in the kitchen and he's drinking some soda, and Ross comes in and he goes, "Hey, sorry man, I don't have anything. Why don't you just split?" And he goes, "Yo, your friend out there, Nikki, she says that she's going to help me." He goes, what is it with you and Nikki? He goes, "Oh, she just says that she's got some of her own stash that she's going to hook me up with." And he goes, "You know what, man? If she hooks you up with some of her own personal stash, it's not going to be her own personal stash." So that's like the warning right there. That's like, be careful with her. Because you don't know what the fuck you're getting into.
Yeah.
And she comes off as the only quote-unquote somewhat coherent one in that house.
Yes.
And, because she's reminiscing with Ross about the girl that he's seeing. She's like, "Oh, we danced together at the strip club." But every time we see Nikki, she's on the phone with Baby, who we find out is Mickey Rourke. He's the cook. Going into all of that in the opening sequence, I always thought that Nikki seemed like the most put together until, the movie starts to get a little deeper.
Yes.
After that, Ross decides that he will give Nikki a ride back to where she's staying. As he does this, it's a real quick edit, which is great because they're on meth, so everything's real fast. We meet the cook, and Cook gives Ross a little bit of meth and says, "We'll call you when we need you." Like I said early on, this is based off of William De Los Santos' Winter in Eugene, Oregon, driving a meth cook around. Ross now becomes the personal driver of the cook for the town. We don't really know where we are. There's a couple of geographical issues with me in this movie, only because I know exactly where this film was shot.
It reminds me of the Palmdale area.
No, actually, it was shot just outside North Hollywood on San Fernando Boulevard and Victory and Lancashire. And my first apartment was on Victory and Lancashire. So I have been to Circus Liquor several times.
Nice.
I've been to that location, and I've driven by the veterinary hospital that they take Taco to, the green dog.
Oh my
I have been to the Las Palmas Hotel. I've visited the sets after I watched this movie. I think I was around like 22, and I was in my apartment, and I was like, this looks really familiar.
Yeah.
And I went to see the locations, and it was like Circus Liquor, Lancashire, and Victory, and I was like, oh shit, that's right across the street. So I went over there, and I was like, my gosh, look at this.
That's cool that you were able to visit all the places.
Oh yeah, it was great. And in the movie, when when the cook is on the payphone outside of Circus Liquor, that was still there. I don't know if it's still there now.
Nope, it's probably not.
Probably not. But across the street was a Wiener Schnitzel, and I have been to Star Garden where Nikki dances. I've been there during the day, and I've been there at night, and it's very much like it is. In the movie.
Gross.
It's not very
seedy?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Like we said, everything in this movie is dirty.
Very dirty.
It's nice to know where it was filmed because it definitely seemed like it was a desert community, like a Victorville or a Palmdale, something outside of Los Angeles proper.
There's a moment in the movie where the cook is on the phone with somebody and he goes, hey, I'm going to be there. And the guy on the other end says, oh, so you're coming to town? Is this my 2 hours notice? Yeah. So in a way, it could be Victorville, because Victorville is a solid hour plus away from Los Angeles.
Yes.
So there's, again, though, the incoherence and the frenetic energy of the entire thing really kind of
goes right along with
it really works because you don't really know where you are.
Yeah.
Like where the fuck am I? And Ross drives around so much that it's just like, does he even know where the hell he's going? It really is, I think, some of these actors' like best performances in my opinion. Maybe not John Leguizamo, even though I think he's fantastic in this. I really love Mina Suvari. I think, like I said, Brittany Murphy, it's my favorite performance of hers. And that's actually come from a lot of people that I know that have seen this movie. They say, that's my favorite Brittany Murphy role. I'm like, oh, mine too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think John Leguizamo was better as an actor and with range in Romeo and Juliet for a lot of reasons. I think his role in Romeo and Juliet was a lot more impactful. I mean, I do give the guy credit for the fact that he has like 4 scenes in Spun and he's basically naked for 3 of them.
Exactly, yeah. Yes, he is. He actually refused to go fully naked for that one sequence towards the end of the movie.
That makes sense.
And yeah, it definitely makes sense. But it's also comical that what he's doing. But it's so dirty too.
Oh, so dirty. And that is one of the issues that I do have with this movie. It's good, but comical to the point of basically doing itself a disservice, I think. With this comedy and being kind of ludicrous and ridiculous, it trivializes these characters a little bit, in my opinion, where I start to lose a little bit of interest, a little bit of empathy for them. Because, there are several scenes in the movie that are just kind of silly, and I get that those are the experience that, not all experiences of drug addicts are going to be fucking terrible, like in Requiem.
Right.
But it takes me out of the movie a little bit when it gets a little more ludicrous.
Gotcha.
And so that was a little bit of the issue I had with it. I thought it was good. I thought everybody did a good job. But unlike Requiem, so Requiem is a very traumatic movie. It is very vulgar in several scenes, very graphic in others. But it seems more for a purpose. It is every single scene in Requiem is purposeful. That's why he didn't want to edit it down to take it out at NC-17 rating.
Sure.
Some of the scenes and some of the things that happen in Spun seem to be vulgar just for vulgarity's sake, not for a purpose of continuing these characters' stories.
I can agree with you on that, especially the first sex scene between April and Ross. There's a lot of cutaways into animation that is just absolutely horrible.
Yes.
I'm not going to get into what they are, but there's one in particular cutaway during the live action sex scene in an animation that I'm like, ugh. But again, I've never done meth.
Right.
I don't know what they're seeing. I don't know what their binges are, what their hallucinations are, anything like that. But I will say that I do really like every time Ross has a trip out and it goes into animation, or when it's the cook in the porn shop. I think a lot of that is really awesome because, again, that's an experience that I've never had. So it's thrown at us in this movie. And again, based on truth and lies. who knows what's the lie? Who knows what's the truth? So one actress that is in this movie that's not usually an actress was Deborah Harry. Deborah Harry was thrown into Spun. She plays Ross's landlord. And one fun thing about that was that was originally meant to be Madonna.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I like Debbie Harry as the landlord instead, especially because the landlord needed to be a little older than him.
Yes, yeah. You know, and I thought she was great when she comes over. She's like, "Hey, Smurf." She already doesn't like him, and it just kind of makes me laugh quite a bit whenever she's on screen. So that was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, another cameo is Rob Halford, lead singer of Judas Priest. He is the porn star clerk.
God, I was trying to place him.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
When I first saw it, I was like, "Isn't that the dude from Judas Priest?" And it definitely was. Thought he was a very, very small role in this movie, but he definitely makes you laugh, like, you know, for the very brief time that he's on screen.
Yes.
Then we have Peter Stormare, who we discussed in the Constantine episode. He played Lucifer. He plays the mullet cop in this. And then we have Alexis Arquette, who was the mustache cop. So Peter Stormare and Alexis Arquette are the two teamed up cops that are going to try and take down Spider-Mike. They really are terrible. But and also methed out, which is kind of fucking funny too.
Yes.
And we meet them because they are part of, in this movie, there is a show like Cops called Bust, and it is all live feed. So they pull up to Frisbee's place thinking it's Spider Mike's, and over the radio you hear, "We're on a live feed, guys. Just make sure that, you know, we're getting the right person." And they're like, "Oh yeah." And then they get out of the car and like, "We have a whole tip that a whole bunch of methamphetamine is being manufactured in this here." And they go in and they arrest Frisbee and his mother's one of those white trash hillbilly types that doesn't get off the couch.
Yeah.
And yeah, the way that they edit around her to
God,
kind of, you know,
everything
kinda
is so gross in this movie and just gratuitous. It's
it really is.
God,
so dirty. Every shot is really gross. And speaking of shots, like you had mentioned, Requiem for a Dream had a record of 2,000 edits. Spun came around and doubled that, plus went 3,000 edits more, and has a 5,000 cut movie. 5,000 edits in that hour and 40 minutes. That is insane. I would love to see the timeline of that editor's timeline. I really would, because, you know, when you shrink it back down and you look at a timeline of editing, it's like, my gosh. And I think back, like, okay, Spun has 5,000. Chicago with Catherine Zeta-Jones, that movie's got an enormous amount of edits. So does Moulin Rouge, and so do a lot of other films. But 5,000 edits is a record, like Guinness Book of World Records. I love in this movie. It really, I love every edit. I really do. There's not one cut in the movie where I'm like, oh, that was unnecessary. We also got to mention Billy Corgan did the music, the original music for Spun. He also has a mini cameo. I always kind of laugh whenever we see Billy Corgan on screen because he's wearing a horrible wig.
Yes.
And that was completely intentional. Billy Corgan, for those that do not know, he is the lead singer and guitarist for the band from the 90s and currently Smashing Pumpkins. So that was cool to have him do the original music. And the original music is great.
Really, really good.
Yeah, it's very good.
All of the lyrics were very appropriate and well written for this movie.
Oh, yeah, I agree. There's also an unauthorized soundtrack for Spun that you actually can put together on your own. Every song is listed on IMDb. I actually had a friend of mine build me the soundtrack without my knowledge. He just showed up at my place one night and said, "Hey, man, I got you these 2 CDs." And I looked at them and it said Spun soundtrack. And I just was like, what? He goes, "Yeah, put it on." And it was every song and every Billy Corgan piece of music. It was 2 discs long, and it was probably over an hour and a half. And it was awesome to have.
That's
and I don't
so cool.
know.
How
yeah,
thoughtful.
I don't even know if I have that. Yeah, it was great. So Spun was shot in 22 days. The original cut came to be 3.5 hours long. And Jonas Akerlund's original idea was to make a documentary on meth heads and meth cooks. And when he met William de los Santos and they got to talking, he commissioned William de los Santos and Creighton Vero to write this script. And that's what we have now, is based on The Truth and Lies for Spun, directed by Jonas Akerlund. There's a couple other things that I think are hilarious in this movie. Actually, this one's not particularly hilarious, but it's the one and only time that the cook tests Ross's loyalty to him. And that has never happened to me, but I have talked to other people that have definitely been in situations like this. And this is when Ross comes in to bring Nikki to the vet because the dog has now become green, and Nikki is convinced that the dog is dying.
Yeah, it's been in a meth lab the whole time. I'm sure it is.
Exactly, yeah.
Fucking hell, people.
So he leaves, he brings the dog to the vet, and he brings Nikki back to the hotel so she can get ready to go to work. And the cook stands up and just kind of circles around Ross, because this is really the second time he's met him, and he's just testing his loyalty, and he kind of smacks him on the chest and he goes, "Did you touch her?" And Ross is like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he's, Ross, you can see in him, he's like, what do you mean? It's like one of those like, "Oh, I'm just gonna brush this off, this guy's joking." And then he goes, "You know goddamn well what I mean." And he pulls his gun out and it puts it on his face, and Ross just puts his hands up, and this is the one moment of clarity that Ross has the entire time, because after the cook is just like, "Oh no, you know what, it's cool, fine, no, fuck it, let's watch this wrestling video," Ross says, "Maybe the road stops here. I can't give you that ride." And then Nikki comes out of the bathroom. She goes, "I need a ride." Then the cook says, No, Ross has got to drive me to the truck stop. You can take a cab." So she leaves, and then, of course, Ross is right back in the middle of it again. He has no way out.
Yeah. And that was the scene where I realized just how big Mickey Rourke is.
Oh my gosh.
When
towering
he
human.
stood up, I was like, oh shit, he's imposing.
Yeah, he really is. And he's so good in this movie, too. Again, going back earlier that we mentioned, the cast is great. Mickey Rourke is really good. Mm-hmm. And there's a moment in the movie where you actually really do feel for Mickey Rourke's character, the cook. And we won't get into that because it's more towards the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. But that entire sequence really puts some empathy towards the cook for you. And I like that because there are moments with Nikki and Ross when Nikki decides that she's going to go to Vegas, and they have that like 2 or 3 day binge in the car, and they're just going off of each other. She's the greatest mom. She can't wait to hold her son. He's in love with his ex-girlfriend. They're so attracted to each other. They're both not hooked on it, but every time they say that, they're doing another bump, and they're just getting more and more and more just twisted out of their mind. And that sequence just always gets me because I love the way it opens with the dark road in front of them, and then as things start to get quicker, Jonas Akerlund throws in a "fasten your seatbelt" sign. Yeah. And you're just like, and you really are. I was reaching for my seatbelt. I was just like, where is it? I need to sit back, because I felt myself leaning towards the screen during that sequence because it's so fucking insane.
It's a frenetic movie.
Very, yeah. Well, 5,000 edits, you better believe it.
Good point.
And when things are sped up even, and then they go back to real time, it's just like the sped up stuff I always feel like is what's in their head and how they think they look. And then, it goes back to real time when they look. And nobody except Nikki really looks at all put together in this movie.
Oh, God. Mina Suvari looks so gross in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The close-ups of her chewing gum,
and her
teeth.
Ugh, gross.
She actually put like violin resin on her teeth. And after shooting, she ended up having to go to the dentist and have that professionally removed. And apparently it took a few visits because she really got into it. And I like her as Cookie. I think she did
a great job.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's really good. Everybody's great. It really is just a who's who, as we've said before. And if anybody hasn't seen it and you'd feel like taking a really hot shower after, then give it a shot.
Yeah, I would say that for Spun, I needed to take a shower afterwards. For Requiem, I needed to go take a shower while crying afterwards.
Yeah,
like the meme from Arrested Development where he's in the shower crying.
Yes. Yeah, you're biting the soap because you're just not sure what you just saw.
Yeah, so those
nuts.
are the differences of our movies, which is so, I think, really illustrating everything perfectly because, again, Requiem is about heroin, this is about meth, and the tones are perfectly matched to those two types of drugs.
Absolutely, yeah. The music, the editing, the sound effects. I really like the use of every close-up, like especially in the beginning when Nikki's filing her nails, and we hear like, and then she goes, "What are you looking at?" And then the close-up's like, it's just like, oh man. And it, like you said, everything is accentuated when you're on something like that. So it's really just, it's done fantastically. It's cut together very beautifully. And as dirty as the movie is, I still think it's a beautiful film from beginning to end because it is put together well. There's no redemption necessarily. No.
It's just dirty.
Again, it's very dirty, but again, it's beautiful in a really twisted way. It's beautiful. The budget for Spun was $2 million. I can't imagine imagine that a lot of the locations were permitted locations. I feel like these were very, guerrilla by the seat of the pants.
Could be.
Even though there's 20 plus credited EPs and producers on this, still a $2 million budget in 2002 with this cast. I imagine Mickey Rourke might have been the highest paid one because of his stance in the industry. Eric Roberts might have been. I don't know.
John Leguizamo, maybe?
Maybe John Leguizamo got like a couple $100,000 for it, There's always that. I mean, even with like Jonah Hill in Wolf of Wall Street, he took a massive pay cut to work with Scorsese.
Yeah.
He could have gotten paid a couple million, but there was only $50,000 for that character. And of course, he gets nominated for an Oscar for it.
Yeah.
And that's great. I think he's awesome. But anyway, $2 million budget. Opening weekend came to $15,160. Did not make very much money worldwide.
Which makes sense. It was an independent movie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure it didn't have much in the way of marketing.
No, not at all. There's no real studio behind this one. So we've already done the highest grossing of 2003. Since Spun was produced in 2002, it was released in March of 2003. So the highest grossing film of 2003 was Finding Nemo, which we had talked about several episodes ago. And this film flew very under the radar. I only knew about it on video rental. And it made its money back in spades on home rentals in the first 3 months. Can you take a guess at how much money it made in those first 3 months of video release on rental?
$9 million.
More than that.
15.
More than that.
What?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I'll give you one more guess.
$21 million.
$42 million
Oh my god, I was
in home rentals in the first 3 months of it being released. Neither did I. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm one of those 42 million.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Jesus, that was some guerrilla marketing right there.
Oh, yeah. $42 million.
Wow.
Wild times indeed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for introducing me to this film.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I really wasn't sure because, again, when I put it on and I was, as the opening credits started, I texted you. I was like, this is a filthy movie.
It is a filthy movie.
This is really, really fucking filthy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you so much. And would you watch Spun with your grandma?
Not a chance in hell. I wouldn't even, like I said earlier, I wouldn't even watch it with my wife. I would not put her through this one.
Yep, agreed.
Yes, it is. The uncensored version is on Amazon Prime. You also can rent it, I'm sure, on Apple TV, $2.99 very likely. And I bought it at, I think I bought it at Blockbuster Video or something like that because I saw that, the uncensored version was available. And I was like, well, that's the one I got to have. So suck that, Taika Waititi.
That'll be your new go-to.
Yeah, it will. So that about wraps up our drug cinema episode here at Movies You Missed podcast. Thank you guys very much for listening. And as always, thank you for coming back to listen. Thank you for the reviews, the interaction on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Please do send us some recommendations if you have any. We look forward to our next episode because we are going far, far lighter. And I am going to be doing a film by Danny Boyle called Millions. If you guys care to follow along with us, that is a very sweet film about a young boy that finds a whole bunch of money and decides to do some wonderful things with it. And you can watch Millions on DVD if you have it, like I do, or you can watch it streaming. It's available on streaming services for $3.99 to rent and is directed by Danny Boyle. It's a very sweet film.
Nice. And to complement that, thankfully we are definitely changing gears next week. This is a kid-centric episode, very family-friendly. My pick to complement that is the Oscar-nominated Billy Elliot. It stars Jamie Bell and Julie Walters. It's from the year 2000, and you can rent it from any streaming service. And it will be a palate cleanser for both of us. That's for sure.
Yes, indeed it will.
And all of our current subscribers will be receiving a bar of soap for this episode.
Oh, that's good. Yes, send us your address and we'll send you a nice bar of soap.
Yes.
And we do like to sign off here with a fun one. Film is a form of art, and in all art, every opinion is valid, except if you think
Julia Roberts should have won the Oscar in 2000 for Erin Brockovich over Ellen Burstyn for Requiem.
There you go. Fully, wholeheartedly agree.
No hate on Erin Brockovich. That was a great movie. Also a great
movie.
role. But
Yeah.
goddamn, Ellen Burstyn gave it her all. And just in pure acting caliber, she should have won all the awards.
Indeed, she should have.
Yep.
You hear that, Ellen? We love you. Well, thank you guys very much again for joining us. We will see you next time. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.